Chris Lee and Blayne Gilmer from Southeastern 14 here, continuing our preview series of State of the Programs. We look at the LSU Tigers for 2023. And Blayne, my goodness, how far did LSU come from the drop-off from Ed Ogeron that last year to that first game where LSU was a special teams disaster, which was a lot of the year, but can't beat Florida State for executing a simple special teams play or not executing. People talking about, did we make the wrong hire? No, LSU did not make the wrong hire, but you know this by now. LSU ends up winning the West, shocks everybody, just demolishing is not even the word for what LSU did to Purdue. And the Tigers really, they did lose a lot of guys on defense, but they bring back most of that offense, including those freshman tackles. Their top two quarterbacks from a year ago, a bevy of rushers and talented receivers. They will have talent on defense too. And my goodness, this could be a top 5 LSU team for 2023.
No doubt. Brian Kelly, extremely impressive in year one. I think if anybody had said year one that Brian Kelly was going to take LSU to the West Championship and be facing like it was a shoe in before the season. Everybody with Bryce Young returning, with Will Anderson over there for Alabama, all the pomp and circumstance of Saban and company trying to get retribution for what Georgia had just done to them in the national championship game. I think everybody thought it was going to be a big bounce back, and Brian Kelly comes in and takes a stranglehold of the West in his first year, and that's without even having a full recruiting cycle to be able to do work. And my goodness, they're recruiting at a very high level, as well as LSU is accustomed to doing, but no drop off there. I know some people were concerned, well, did he really recruit well enough at Notre Dame? It's a little bit different trying to get kids into school at Notre Dame than it is LSU. No offense to the LSU fans out there.
Yeah.
Just a little bit different, but a lot of talent. I think a lot of excitement. Now here comes the question, Chris. Now the expectations are there. So how do you handle that year two? Not necessarily Brian Kelly and that staff, because they're going to be prepared. They've kind of been there before with high expectations. Now you got some of these young players. They go from being the good story to year one winning the West. Now you got that expectations on you. But hey, when you sign up to play in the purple and gold there for LSU, that's what you sign up for, is those expectations. So I'm excited to talk about this 2023 LSU team.
Well, how you handle it is a coach with a track record for having been there and done it, and a ton of talent, especially starting at the quarterback position. Jaden Daniels at times felt like just carried this team. Actually ran for 1,109 yards gain. Now, his actual total was 885. That includes sacks, which there were a bunch of, which happens when you start freshman tackles, which LSU did all year. Behind him, Garrett Nussmeier, who has got rivals Joe Milton for maybe the strongest arm in the league.
Dan Marino.
Yeah, I mean, pick your name, right? They did lose Walker Howard. We're doing this January the 22nd, so that has happened at this point. And also say that to say, if we have a big miss here on anything and you're watching this like in May, there's probably going to be stuff that happens between now and then that we may not have covered as we do this. But you said in midseason, and it raised my eyebrows, that LSU had the most talented group of receivers in the league. I questioned that. I said it was Tennessee. You may be right. Malik Neighbors put on a show in the bowl game. Mason Taylor, probably the most talented returning tight end in the league, not named Brock Bowers.
Yeah.
You got running backs galore who've had experience. You look at skill position players, Blayne, and LSU brings back a whole lot, not to mention a future first-round left tackle, too, who now will be a sophomore.
Oh, no, I agree with you. Will Campbell, listen, any freshman in the SEC that is forced to start, especially at left tackle, is going to have some struggles here or there. But listen, you saw when he was unavailable against Tennessee how bad it hurt their protection up there. So Will Campbell is valuable, and he's going to be outstanding over there. But you talked about the skill positions. My goodness, I still stand by this. LSU, I think, going into the 2023 season, I think it has the most talented, most dynamic wide receiver group in the SEC. You go look at Malik Neighbors, and he's as good of a wide receiver one as you'll find. Brian Thomas is long and athletic, makes catches that are just not your normal catches. It's good to have guys who are possession guys, but you need people who can make your quarterback better. They can erase mistakes, right? And Brian Thomas Jr. is one of those guys that can do that. They get a big portal pickup. Aaron Anderson, who is a New Orleans native, he went to Alabama, was one of the top 2 or 3 receivers in the country coming out. Didn't play really, dude. He had some injury stuff. Didn't play as a freshman for Alabama. He transfers back home, so to speak, and then now will be playing. And I think he'll be in the mix early over there. Aaron Anderson, a really, really talented wide receiver that has elite speed, can play in the slot. He's a former track guy, so look for him to make some big plays down the field. And then Kyron Lacey is a guy who's a good possession receiver. They get Chris Hilton back from injury. I mean, the list goes on and on at wide receiver. You mentioned Mason Taylor, tremendous tight end. So whoever the quarterback ends up being, I think it's going to be Jaden Daniels. That's where they're leaning to going towards. He's going to get all the benefit of the doubt. But if something happens and Garrett Nussmeier is forced into action, then no worries there. I think he's proven that he can sling it around and play really well. I think the question was, can LSU run the football, Chris? Because at times that was a struggle for them.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a struggle when Jaden Daniels ran it so much. But again, I go back
traditionally run.
Right. No, I get it. I'm just making a little joke there. But look, they do have several guys. They bring back a lot of guys who've had a lot of carries in this league. And I think that is probably going to give LSU
and other leagues and other leagues.
I think that's probably going to give LSU a big advantage compared to most teams on its schedule.
Yeah, like you said, they were young up front. There was some shuffling. Also, too, started out with Garrett Dellinger playing some center. He had some problems with snap accuracy and stuff, so they bump him over to guard. When it comes in, Charles Turner took over at center. He returned, so they got more stability, more continuity, more understanding year 2 in that system there for LSU. Armani Goodwin is a guy that was running the ball really well towards a little bit before the midpoint of the season, ended up getting hurt, but I think he's a guy that could emerge as maybe RB1 for LSU this year. But as you mentioned, whether it's Kane or Emery, I think these guys, they've got depth there, and they need to be able to establish the run more traditionally and take some of that burden off of Jaden Daniels, because, Chris, we saw it later in the year, in that Texas A&M game where Jaden Daniels got hampered with the ankle injury heading into the SEC championship. The SEC is just too physical of a league to consistently be putting your quarterback in jeopardy like that. And if they're able to get a better push on more traditional run play, inside zone, power, counter, all that kind of stuff, then I think it'll highly benefit this LSU offense in year 2 under Brian Kelly.
Okay, Blaine, LSU lost a lot of good defenders, guys that it feels like had been there forever. These guys will probably be on NFL rosters this time next year. Micah Baskerville, Jay Ward, B.J. Ojulari, Roy, Bernard Converse, a lot of guys, Gardner. He gets back Harold Perkins Jr., pretty good ball player. Greg Penn, Greg Brooks Jr. made a lot of tackles last year. You mentioned did not have the use of one of its better defensive linemen, almost all year.
Yeah.
The Tigers will reload here pretty well, I believe.
No doubt. You mentioned it there at the end, the defensive lineman. That would be Mason Smith, who got injured in the FSU game, tore his ACL, was out all year. That is huge. It's not an overstatement to say that Mason Smith could end up being the best defensive tackle in the country if healthy. I mean, he's that kind of difference maker. They've got Mekhi Wingo coming back up front as well. When you look on the edge, Harold Perkins, I mean, he's just absolutely different. He's a difference maker and someone that is going to wreak havoc, or at very least draw a ton of attention from opposing offenses, people, how they have to account for him in the run game, how they have to set their protections to account for him. So I think that's something that Brian Kelly's going to enjoy the luxury of having on his defense over there. But one of the bigger pickups would be at the linebacker position, literally one of the better pickups in the entire transfer portal window. The first one there, from December through late January, would have to be Omar Spates from Oregon State. Oregon State, a defense that played really well. I mean, look, Florida wasn't a juggernaut on offense, but they beat them 30-3 in the Las Vegas Bowl at the end of the season. They beat Oregon, so some good wins for Oregon State. And this is a guy who was a heavy contributor for 4 years, a starter, and had over 300 career tackles for Oregon State, 8 tackles for a loss last year. So getting an experienced guy at the linebacker position, they lost some guys on the outside, of course, with BJ Ojulari and Ali Gay, as you mentioned. They add Ovi Oghofu from Texas, who had a good year as well. He's going to be a super senior, a guy that had 7.5 tackles for a loss and 1.5 sacks for Texas last year. So, listen, I think that Brian Kelly is utilizing the portal tremendously and picking the pieces that he needs, and they're recruiting extremely well. 5th in the country. There's going to be guys, whether it be Javian Tovanio at defensive back, Michael Daughtery, who I've seen play up close and personal from the Metro Atlanta area at defensive back. So, yeah, they're missing some pieces that they brought in last year with Javon Bernard Converse from the back end a year ago. But listen, the LSU is one of these programs that rebuilds, and I think getting Mason Smith back and Harold Perkins, of course, being there, and then that Omar Spates addition. Listen, the LSU could be very, very good defensively this upcoming year.
Okay, the schedule. Let's talk about that for a moment. I don't have the schedule of everybody next year, but I will tell you this. I don't know. There could be a game in week 1 that I'm more excited about watching than LSU and that rematch with Florida State, given what Florida State's going to bring back. Next week, a matchup with Grambling, which is really neat. That's a very historic FCS program in that state. You got the matchup with Mississippi State on the road. You got Arkansas at home. Ole Miss, I mean, we hit just the meat of the SEC schedule. Missouri, that one will be in Columbia. It's a little tougher. Auburn with Hugh Freeze will make its visit to LSU on October the 14th. Got a matchup with Army. That's an odd one. Army not a team that's easy to prepare for without a week off.
That's tough. That's tough. You know, it's just something you don't see, and you have to totally change your practice habits, everything for that week, and you probably have to start working on it in the summer, honestly. So a totally different deal there.
Yeah, potentially the game of the year in the SEC, November 4th with Alabama and Tuscaloosa. Then you got Florida in Tiger Stadium. Your tune-up game with Georgia State before rivalry weekend, and then A&M to close it. I'm looking at this. Georgia State will be a game that obviously LSU will win, but Georgia State's a team that's given some SEC teams fits. We talked about Army. When I look at schedules, I kind of like to look through and see schedules without a lot of pass outs and really not a lot on the LSU is going to handle most of these games, right? Because I think it's potentially a top 5 team in the country. But I mean, what an exciting schedule! Just not a lot of dull games on there.
Yeah, let me tell you something. With what LSU has offensively in terms of the wide receiver position, the 2 quarterbacks it has, the experience it has returning at offensive line, and the additions it brought in defensively through the portal and getting Mason Smith back. I think your prediction of being a top 5 team preseason might not even be high enough. Might not even be giving them some credit. I think they could end up being
that's a minimum.
Yeah,
They might be top. If you get what I'm saying.
A top 3 team, in there. But it is it's going to be a lot of expectations in there. People are saying, a lot of people are just defaulting to, oh, well, Alabama will bounce back and win the West again. Listen, in my opinion, LSU, based off what they have, LSU should be the favorites to win the West again, because there's a lot of continuity on both sides of the ball. There's key pieces that have been brought in. And I just think that, listen, the schedule is not easy, as you mentioned. It reminds me, in fact, a lot of Arkansas's schedule last year, where they had tough non-conference games, like with
every
Liberty.
Week they played somebody, BYU.
Yeah, Liberty, BYU, teams like that. So when you're talking about Army and Georgia State, people may, scoff at those. But listen, those are teams that are different. You have to prepare a little bit different for and do things a little bit different and make sure your guys aren't overlooking them, all that kind of stuff. But I think the maturity of this team, how much they've grown from having success early, and now that success being expected out of them. Listen, this matchup over my shoulder from this past year, LSU and Georgia, I wouldn't be shocked if we ended up there again in Atlanta. I think that it's going to be a tremendous year, and I think that if you're talking about state of the program is excellent right now for LSU. I think it's Alabama and LSU, fighting for SEC West dominance.
Yeah, if we're doing predictions right now, January the 22nd, those would be the 2 teams that I would take to meet in the title game. Now, surviving that schedule is going to be tough, but everybody in the West, I would say nobody's got it easy. So in that sense, they're kind of all on the same footing. Okay, if you like our channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. We talk SEC football year-round. We are knee-deep in basketball. We preview and review every game in SEC play and hoops. We're going to be doing the same type thing in baseball. The Tigers going to be the consensus number 1 in the country. I'm pretty sure when all the polls in baseball are out. I can't imagine anybody leapfrogging LSU for that one spot. So, Tiger fans, we're here for you for that too. Again, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our content. He is Blayne Gilmer. I'm Chris Lee. We'll see you again at Southeastern 14.